Injustice, Gods Among Us. Yes, I know that this is technically a game and was so before it ever was a comic, but it does have kind of an Elseworlds type feel, and entries 8 and 4 didn't really have the Elseworlds label on them. So I am putting this on the list. And at number 1, because ironically enough, I would not do this as just a movie. Yes, I would do a movie, but I would also base a TV series around this. Okay, so the movie would open up with the destruction of Metropolis after Superman had been hit with Scarecrow's fear toxin and was tricked into beating Lois to death after the Joker operated on her and linked her heart to a nuke that was activated the minute she died. So then, in the recap, we'd have Batman interrogating the Joker. So anyways, we then see Superman bust in and kill the Joker. Okay, so Act 1 would essentially be the Justice League from the other world alongside that world's Joker having been brought to the Injustice universe, having been separated from Batman, and, well, coming to the conclusion that they are in a parallel universe. And Act 1 would end with Batman being captured. Act 2 would consist of Batman and his regime essentially going to the Batcave and picking up the kryptonite-fueled weapon that Batman built to neutralize Superman if he ever became a threat. Lex stealing it when the Justice League goes to break the other Batman out of Stryker's Island, which leads to Lex fighting the Joker and 3 members of the regime, until he's confronted by Superman, who then kills him. The insurgency breaks the other Batman out of Stryker's Island and then is teleported away by the Watchtower's teleportation system. And Act 2 will end with Superman declaring to the Justice League, or in this case the regime, that they're going to destroy both Gotham City and Metropolis in order to both draw out this new Justice League and to make examples of them. Act 3 begins with the Flash deserting the regime, running all the way to Gotham City and warning the insurgency about what's coming, what Superman has planned. After the Justice League was attacked by a group of random villains who work for Superman, Wonder Woman is teleported back to Paradise Island by Ares, who then informs her that the Amazons of this world and the Wonder Woman of this world serve the regime. She fights the other Wonder Woman, takes control of that Amazon army, and then heads back to Metropolis with them. The two Batmen fight because the one who leads the insurgency thinks that the other Justice League should return to their world and prepare for Superman and his regime to invade that universe. But then they decide to work together and bring the Superman from their world into this fight. As the film's climax, we would get the Superman versus Superman fight. That would end with Superman and everyone who worked for him being put on trial. And the movie would then end with Superman locked up in the Red Sun prison. And there would be a post-credit scene of Superman in the Red Sun prison, but his eyes glow red, which is pretty much foreshadowing that an actual movie adaptation of Injustice 2. Now, as a follow-up to an Injustice movie, I would also do an Injustice TV show as a tie-in, with the first episode being an adaptation of the first few issues of the Injustice comic, with the first scene being the recap from the movie. So anyways, there would be a total of 5 seasons before there'd be a sequel to Injustice the movie. All 5 seasons of this show would be an adaptation of an Injustice comic. Years 1 through 5 of everything that happened before the events of the film are meant to occur. With season 1 being an almost complete adaptation of Injustice year one up until the season finale. With the super pill completed, Superman flies into the Batcave armed with the Phantom Zone projector and blasts the Dark Knight, sealing him away in the Phantom Zone. You see, one problem that I actually had with Injustice and a lot of superhero movies is that Batman was really written out of character. I mean, if he had a chance to take Superman down because Superman was taking over the world, he would have taken it. But yeah, trying to stop Superman without killing him, that just seems so out of character for Batman. Especially since Batman knows what a threat in evil Superman would be. So having Batman locked up in the Phantom Zone for at least 4 seasons would actually make more sense. If it's not Batman who's fighting Superman to try and save the world, then the story would kind of make sense as to why Superman is so easily beating down everyone who crosses him. Okay, so Season 2 would begin with an adaptation of the first annual, where Lobo comes to Earth and Superman fights him, then throws him into the sun, but it doesn't kill him, and he either escapes or Superman lets him go, and then goes after Harley Quinn, Green Arrow, and Black Canary. However, they manage to defeat Lobo too, and they try to lock him up. But at the end of the episode, he would escape. So anyways, the next episode would begin off in space and would essentially set up the events for this season, with Batman gone and Superman on his path to starting the regime. Sinestro knows that he can find a very strong ally in Superman. So we'd actually see him confront Kyle Rayner and kill him like he did in the comic book. So anyways, everything in Season 2 after this point will go as follows. Sinestro will appear on Earth. A fight would then break out between him and Superman. Superman would then defeat Sinestro and lock him up as opposed to killing him. But right before he locks Sinestro up, Sinestro would then warn Superman that the Guardians are coming for him. Ganthet then shows up at the Hall of Justice and threatens Superman. and then he would leave. Sinestro would then tell them about his time as a Green Lantern and how after the death of his wife he kind of went down the path that Superman did, and the Guardians sent the Green Lantern Corps to stop him, which they did, and to show Superman that he isn't a threat, he surrenders his yellow power ring. Green Lantern tries to convince the Guardians that Superman is in the right when they tell him to stand down, because they're sending the Green Lantern Corps to bring him in. So this causes Hal Jordan to get into a fight with his Green Lantern brethren when he tries to escape. He's on his way out, but then they actually manage to capture him. A fight between the Justice League and the Regime breaks out. The one Squirrel Green Lantern is actually able to nearly fry Superman's brain with his power ring, but with Lex Luthor seeing that, he not only releases Sinestro, but gives him his power ring back. Superman's brain is almost toasted when suddenly it's the squirrel's brain that's impaled, as Sinestro appears, having aligned himself with Superman. The Green Lantern Corps is forced into surrender, or at least the troops that the Guardians sent here are forced to surrender. And Superman decides that it's best that he lock them up as opposed to killing them. The Justice League fully becomes the Regime, with military police and everything, as Batwoman informs Commissioner Gordon, Harvey Bullock, and Renee Montoya of the super pill that Batman had developed that would give them superhuman capabilities. Both the Sinestro Corps and the Green Lantern Corps head for Earth to do battle. Superman, who's aligned himself with Sinestro, is now fighting alongside the Sinestro Corps. We'd see a fight between Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner that would be interrupted when Ganthet informs Hal that he's broken his oath and strips him of his Green Lantern powers. Him and Carol fall, but then Sinestro offers him a yellow power ring, saying that the only way that the two of them could be saved would be for him to embrace his fear, which he does, turning him into the Yellow Lantern from Injustice. Yellow Lantern would then save Carol Ferris. Ganthet and Black Canary then tag team Superman, and Black Canary shoots Superman with a kryptonite bullet. Just as Superman's about to die, he would receive a Yellow Lantern power ring that would make him an honorary member of the Sinestro Corps, which he uses to pry the kryptonite bullet from his body, and he knocks out Black Canary. Superman then cuts through the Green Lantern Corps like a hot knife through butter because he now has the powers of a Yellow Lantern. Sinestro then kills John Stewart and goes to Hal Jordan saying that Guy Gardner did it, bringing forth the rematch between the two. Hal Jordan, now with Yellow Lantern powers, easily overcomes Guy Gardner and kills him, thinking that he avenged John's death. Superman grabs Ganthet by the throat, flies him directly at Mogo, and slams the Guardian directly into the living planet, killing both Ganthet and Mogo in one shot. Black Canary lies on the ground after her fight with Superman. Dr. Fate finds her and decides to save her. She then wakes up in a cabin with Dr. Fate, Green Arrow, and their son. As Dr. Fate explains that he saved her, he would then say he has to go back and save his world, which he does, bringing Season 2 to a close. Okay, so Season 3 is essentially going to begin with the aftermath of Season 2, with Constantine looking upon the wreckage of the war between Superman / the Sinestro Corps and the Green Lanterns. Wanting to get his daughter Rose out of harm's way, Constantine meets up with Dr. Fate and Zatanna, and they form Justice League Dark, which will essentially stand in for Batman until he gets out of the Phantom Zone. Okay, with those changes aside, everything else in Season 3 will be adapted from Injustice Year 3, with the events of Season 3 going as follows. After the formation of Justice League Dark, John Constantine goes down to hell to basically lie to Trigun's face and tell him that Superman was holding Raven hostage, with the episode ending with the revelation that it was actually Constantine who captured Raven and is hiding her location. Justice League Dark is then attacked by the Spectre, but Zatanna casts a spell to get them out of there. The Spectre then goes to Superman and warns him about Justice League Dark. Madame Xanadu then gives her prediction of things to come, with the fall of Deadman, the rise of a new Deadman, Wonder Woman coming out of her coma, and Superman going into one. The spell that's binding Raven is temporarily weakened, allowing her to call out to Superman and tell her that she's in Gotham City. Superman flies to Gotham, to the location Raven gave him. He tries to rip down the walls, but sees that it's reinforced with magic. So he then uses his yellow lantern ring to pry it open. Superman is then surprise attacked by Ragman and Constantine. Superman gets backup in the form of Shazam, who beats down Ragman, the Spectre, Yellow Lantern, and Sinestro. Deadman arrives and possesses Shazam, but is then exorcised by the Spectre, who instantly strikes him down. In his last dying moments, Deadman returns to his goddess Ramakishna and asks that she transfer his powers over to Dick Grayson, which she does, allowing Dick Grayson to become the new Deadman. Constantine tries to convince Swamp Thing to join the fight, but he declines, while the Spectre is talking to the Phantom Stranger, who then attacks and kills the Phantom Stranger. After receiving the same magic powder that put Wonder Woman in her coma, Jason Blood, as his alter ego, Edragon the Demon, would then attack both Superman and Sinestro. And it would essentially play out like it did in the comic, but with the change being it's Edragon the Demon, Jason Blood. It's not going to be revealed to be Batman at the end of the fight. So anyways, it would go just like in the comic. Edragon would use his Hellfire to keep the lanterns from using their rings, forcing Superman to use his super breath to cool down their hands, and then just knock him out with the magic dust. Use that to put him in a coma. A supernatural coma, but a coma nonetheless. The Phantom Stranger brings the Spectre to one of Saturn's moons so they can talk. Knowing that Superman's being attacked, the Spectre flies down to try and help him, and the Phantom Stranger tries to stop him. And the battle between the two begins, which ends with the Spectre pulling out his sword and impaling the Phantom Stranger, thus leading to his death. The next episode following that event would be an adaptation of Injustice Year 3, Issue 7. After having become the new Deadman, Dick Grayson flies through the skies of Gotham City and investigates Arkham Asylum, and finds Jim Corrigan, the Spectre's alter ego, locked up in Arkham Asylum, laughing hysterically. Ares produces a cure and wakes Wonder Woman out of her coma. Wonder Woman returns to the Justice League to see Superman in the same coma. Then when she sees the yellow lantern ring on Superman's finger, she instantly attacks Sinestro, assuming he did something to Superman. A fight between Sinestro and Wonder Woman breaks out, but then Superman, having been awoken by Ares, stops the fight. Wonder Woman demands that Superman hand over the Yellow Lantern ring, saying that fear is not what they stand for. Superman hands it over. They fly off, and she crushes it in her hand. The Spectre then transports the regime to the Tower of Fate. The insurgency arrives, and like in the comic, Dr. Fate would transport both the insurgency and Justice League Dark into a maze in which all logic is thrown out the window. Trigon appears just like in the comic, and then Constantine kind of reveals what he did, says that was my plan all along, and abandons Justice League Dark. Just as Trigon's about to finish Superman off, he gets blasted by Mxyzptlk. A fight between the imp and the demon god begins, while a fight between Justice League Dark and the regime goes on outside in the green. The fight between Mxyzptlk and Trigon is suddenly tearing reality apart. With reality falling apart, Swamp Thing is actually able to send both the Justice League Dark and the insurgents out, but he gets burned alive in the crossfire between Trigon and Mxyzptlk, leaving Swamp Thing in hell, bringing Season 3 to a close. Season 4 will, like the others, be an adaptation of Injustice Year 4, but with the difference of the Justice League Dark essentially standing in for Batman. The first episode of Injustice Season 4 would open up with Mount Olympus, essentially giving a backstory to Ares and how he became the god of war when he called Zeus a coward, stating that war would be needed because that was a time when they actually had to go to war. So Zeus gets pissed off after being called a coward, saying, "Oh, if you like war so much, then let that be your identity." Ares would get into a fight with Hercules, just like in the comic, and then he would go to meet up with Justice League Dark, essentially giving them a plan to beat Superman, because if they fail and Superman actually takes over the world, Superman would cease all conflict, and thus Ares would die. After that, the events of Injustice Season 4 would then go as follows. Renee Montoya, after eating a whole ton of those green superpower pills, confronts Robin, nearly beats him to death, and demands that Superman come out and fight her or she'd kill him. Superman then intervenes, and a fight between Superman and Renee would begin. She shoves down even more of the pills and then goes head to head with the Man of Steel, but he still ends up beating her to death. Ares and Hera try to convince Zeus to step down to the mortal plane and do something about Superman. But at this point in the season, Zeus would not want to do anything about this situation. Lex Luthor operates on Barbara Gordon, allowing her to reclaim the mantle of Batgirl. Zeus sends the army of the Amazons to bring down Superman. But then the regime shows up. Wonder Woman would then suggest trial by combat to Hermes. Ares then pops in and informs Wonder Woman that she'd be fighting on the side of the insurgency. She then tries to attack him along with Hermes, which causes a fight between the regime and the Amazons/insurgency members. But then Zeus shows up, and Hera tells her if she refuses, then Wonder Woman's mother would pay with her life. The fight between Superman and Wonder Woman begins. They both get indecent blows, but it's obvious Superman is letting her win, which she then almost does, until Sinestro blasts her in the back, telling Superman that he shouldn't have let his guard down, fear is his friend, and that showing weakness like this could cause a lot of bad things in the future. This causes Hermes to order the Amazonian army to attack. We get a Hermes versus Flash fight. Then a good chunk of the gods from Mount Olympus appear and deliver Superman an ultimatum. Give up or die. Superman doesn't respond, and a fight between him and Hercules breaks out. But when Hercules tells Wonder Woman that she fights for them, she teams up with Superman to help beat down her half-brother. Shazam joins in the fight in beating down Hercules, but then suddenly his powers are stripped away as he's reduced down to Billy Batson. Zeus appears, and Billy tries to transform into Shazam, but it doesn't work. When asking how this is possible, Zeus reveals that he actually could stop Billy's transformation because, well, in this version I would change a few things. I would say because Hercules is part of Shazam's transformation, and Hercules is the son of Zeus, that Zeus can interfere and stop Billy from becoming Shazam. Then he would say he's not going to allow Shazam to use the power of his most powerful son to hurt any of his other children. And he just grabs Billy right by the shirt and threatens Superman to surrender. Ironically enough, scared that Zeus would hurt Billy, Superman backs off. Wonder Woman asks her father not to do this, but he tells her to shut up, and the regime walks away. Everything that happened between the regime and the Greek gods was broadcasted on the news. When going down to the cellar of LexCorp, Lex sees Superman talking with Ares, and that episode ends with a giant tidal wave coming towards the surface. The next episode would begin with Superman above the wave with Wonder Woman and Poseidon. In this episode, we'd have Poseidon fight both Aquaman and Mera. Highfather had been watching this all from New Genesis and comes to the conclusion that Ares isn't working alone. He's been working with Darkseid. The United Nations decide to fire nukes at Superman, Wonder Woman, Poseidon, and Aquaman, thinking it'll stop this war, bringing it to an end. But Superman and Wonder Woman catch the nukes and throw them into space. Superman then returns and demands that Hera tell Zeus to renounce his claim to the Earth. Zeus then tries to strike down Superman, but then, booming in from New Genesis, it's Highfather himself. Zeus and Highfather have their little conversation outside of time, where he tells him that Ares had been working with Darkseid and that this is just one big trick. Zeus allows Billy Batson to turn back into Shazam. Superman grabs Ares, flies him to Apokolips, then gets into a fight with Darkseid, but then he leaves Ares and Darkseid beaten on the floor of Darkseid's throne room, and then returns to the United Nations to tell them the regime is going nowhere. The final episode of Season 4 would be an adaptation of the Injustice Year 4 annual, but at the end, in the final scene, we'd see Lex Luthor running down a hallway and walk into a room, seeing an empty container and commenting on how the clone of Superman that he had made had just escaped. Okay, Season 5 would open with Batman in the Phantom Zone talking to General Zod with Zod agreeing to train Batman, as we find out that escaping the Phantom Zone is actually a martial arts technique. So anyways, Batman returns from the Phantom Zone. He actually knows everything that's gone on, and he tries to recruit the members of the Rogues to help him fight Superman, knowing that Superman would eventually do the same. After the Flash and Superman had rounded up some of the villains that Plastic Man freed in the Season 4 finale, the events of Season 5 will go as such. Doomsday falls down to Earth, gets into a fight with Superman, but unbeknownst to them, Bane is actually watching this fight. He jumps in to help Superman, and they knock out Doomsday. Wonder Woman shows up questioning why he's there, and Bane tells them that they have a common enemy in Batman. Thus, Superman allows Bane to join the regime. Bane then captures Catwoman to lure Batman out into a fight. Bane then fights a fake Batman, while Batgirl fights Killer Croc, beats him, and breaks Catwoman out. The real Batman shows up as Bane gets hit in the back by the Batmobile. We get a fight between the insurgency and the regime that goes nowhere. Selena tells Bruce that she can't do this anymore, and she leaves. Hawkman comes for his wife Shayera, aka Hawkwoman, but this causes a fight to break out between Hawkman and the regime, which ends with Hawkman eating his teeth along with the pavement. In Smallville, Kansas, the holiday Clark Kent Day, which has its first celebration, becomes the target of a terrorist attack led by the Rogues, which is seen by Bizarro, who then kills them, believing himself to be the real Superman. Solomon Grundy is on a rampage. Superman flies in to fight him. Superman encounters Bizarro, who thinks he's a fake Superman. A three-way fight between Superman, Bizarro, and Solomon Grundy begins. Yellow Lantern joins the fight. Yellow Lantern launches an attack that kills Solomon Grundy, but Bizarro is able to fly off. Superman and Yellow Lantern take Solomon Grundy's dead body to Lex Luthor at Cadmus Labs, hoping that Luthor can brainwash Solomon Grundy into obeying Superman and joining the regime as Superman flies off. Damian Wayne becomes the new Nightwing. The Joker clan is formed and names Harley as its leader. Lex Luthor tricks Bizarro into going to the Fortress of Solitude with the device that would wake up Doomsday, who instantly attacks Bizarro as he's essentially being influenced by the brainwashing Superman had Lex Luthor put into him. Cyborg sees this and tells Superman where Bizarro is and where to find him. The fight between Bizarro and Doomsday continues. Superman flies in and Doomsday attacks him. Lex Luthor sends the Flash to help Superman, knowing that he doesn't have to do anything, just sit back and watch Doomsday beat Superman to death, but he can't bring himself to do it. And Doomsday ends up killing Bizarro, even though Superman said he wanted him alive. Superman has Victor Zsasz kill Alfred in an attempt to lure Batman out, which it does, and Batman beats the crap out of Victor Zsasz. For the first time, Damian appears as the new Nightwing, fights Batman, but Batman defeats him easily. Then Superman appears, and we get a Batman versus Superman fight which goes nowhere as the regime arrives But Flash gets Batman out of there to attend Alfred's funeral, and Batman asks Flash to go back and stop Lois Lane from being killed by Superman when he was infected with Scarecrow's fear toxin, but the Flash says no and leaves. But then Flash kind of gets a taste of his own medicine when he finds out that his girlfriend Iris is part of a small group that stood up to the regime, and he ends up arresting them for it. The regime sets foot in conduct, leading to a fight between Superman and Black Adam breaking out, which Black Adam loses and agrees to join the regime. Via computer, Batman asks Hawkman to get him some kryptonite, which Hawkman agrees to. Hawkman gets the kryptonite by beating Mongul in a fight. Batman, Batgirl, and Batwoman capture Cyborg. Well, at the exact same time, Hawkman arrives with the kryptonite, having infused it with his nth metal mace, and confronts Superman. A fight begins, and Hawkman just beats down on Superman until the Flash intervenes and takes the kryptonite mace out of Hawkman's hands, to which Superman then beats Hawkman to death. Superman then passes out due to kryptonite poisoning. Superman tells Wonder Woman that they need to find Cyborg and can't let Batman find a certain piece of Cyborg's memory. As Batman, Batgirl, and Batwoman are going through it, they find what they're looking for. The video of Superman killing a bunch of Joker supporters. They hack into every system on Earth in an attempt to discredit Superman by playing the video, when suddenly Raven appears and uses her magic to plunge the world into darkness in a way that erases the video from Cyborg's mainframe. Knowing that something outside of technology is blocking the signal, which Batman figures out it's magic, Batman, Batgirl, and Batwoman leave the abandoned LexCorp tower, and then the Flash arrives to pick Cyborg up, taking him back to the regime's base. Batman and Luthor then devise the plan to bring a Justice League from a parallel Earth here to help them in their war against the regime. Batman hires Deathstroke to come out of retirement for one last solo mission in which Deathstroke is captured by metamorpho and handed over to the regime, where Raven and Cyborg torture him. Superman eventually does find out through Catwoman what Batman is doing, so he flies in prepared to stop it. But Batwoman is about to trigger it, and Superman blasts her with his heat vision, killing her, but she pressed the button, and it separated everyone, bringing Season 5 of Injustice to a close, but at the same time leading into the events of Injustice the movie. And yes, there would be a sequel to Injustice the movie, adapting the storyline of Injustice 2. And there would be one final season of the Injustice TV show, which would essentially adapt the storylines of Injustice 2 to bridge the gap between Injustice the movie and its sequel. And that's where this hypothetical superhero film franchise would end, or at least for now.